Hello again, everybody. This is James Bartley, and you're listening to the Cosmic Switchboard Show. Today, our very special guest, returning to the Cosmic Switchboard Show, is Dr. Mesheril Manyfeathers. Mesheril Manyfeathers is a medicine carrier, shamanic healing guide, herbal physician, love catalyst, parapsychologist, metaphysician, truth seeker, and mystic. She is a gifted seer with the ability of pinpointing the root cause of an issue. As a universal bridge, Mesheril provides an access point within the unified field between this dimension and higher dimensions, and between all peoples. She specializes in guiding people to open to unconditional love, wholeness, and unity consciousness, where clients are guided to become self-empowered and able to reclaim their soul and true self. The journey begins by first learning to love and accept the self, and then moving towards self-reflection and greater conscious awareness, while merging with the soul and source. And we will provide all of Mesheril's website information on our dedicated YouTube channel as well as our website. So without any further ado, Dr. Mesheril Manyfeathers, welcome to the Cosmic Switchboard Show.
Thank you so much for having me back, James.
It's our pleasure. A lot's been going on since we spoke the last time, since the last time you came on our show. What's been going on in your life, and what are the trends and patterns you're seeing? And has there been any kind of, new realizations or epiphanies for you in the meantime?
As you know, James, I've had some reservations about free will, and there are those that say we have none, and I was of the opinion that we had limited free will. But I now have a completely different understanding about it and why I had reservations, thanks in part to Harold Klaus Weller, who I'm pretty sure you know of anyway, explaining his understanding of what free will is. So to put it simply, free will is a binary aspect of moving towards pleasure and away from pain, and therefore connected to the alien AI, reptilian demons. Essentially is about changing or manipulating reality rather than true manifestation, which is their limitation, not ours. And that's the really important part of this. So before I explain our true power, I want to bring awareness to what people often describe as having experiences of incredibly powerful love energies in a particular place. As we know, when that feeling comes from the Zeta Greys, which is a common one when they activate a contactee's own love center, and it's a manipulation of the brain neurotransmitters. Mm-hmm. The love is from the person themselves, not from the Zeta Grey, who has no feelings, emotions at all. They're devoid. So it's sort of something similar that's going on the planet. So people often describe that feeling of a powerful love in a church. An interview I was listening to recently, the woman described a clinic in Switzerland that way, and then went on to say that it had been where Druids and Celts had lived for thousands of years. Huh. People are mistaking power for love. And yes, we're feeling the power, but I guarantee that it's a dark, cold power, not true light power. I remember the power that I felt when I was in the Notre Dame Cathedral in Montreal, Canada, and it was a definitely cold, incredible power, but there was definitely no love there. And I wasn't particularly awake and aware of energy at that point, consciously aware. I mean, I was, but not consciously. So I've had that same feeling in other places, in vortexes and power sites, and it's the energy of the place that we're feeling, not a name. You can't put a name on energy per se. It's energy, and yes, it is very powerful in certain places, and particularly over churches and places where there've been a lot of rituals and where the ley lines come together. That is a powerful energy, and I guarantee you that wherever Druids were, there's not going to be any love there because they were dark magicians. So,
yes, they were.
As far as humans and our potential power, though, we are a trinary system, or we're supposed to be anyway. And as such, our power is the ability to manifest and create reality through the alignment of the three energy centers, which by no coincidence are our three brains. We manifest first by activating the heart, which is the seat of the soul and source connection, which is love. through the mind or mental body, where we connect to the unified field, a universal mind, and that's through thought. And then the belly, which is our feelings, which is the union of a thought plus either love or fear. And the issue is that people aren't doing that. But still, people are manifesting their reality every day in every moment. But without activating the three centers and focusing in on fear instead of love, then people are actually getting what they don't want instead of what they do want. So that's part of the mind control to prevent people from creating everything that they desire. And focusing on free will is just a diversion tactic, which is also working really well. And as I said, it's about moving away from pain and towards pleasure, which is part of the ego trap. The aliens themselves are separated from source. We all know that. And they lost the ability to manifest eons ago. They can only manipulate a reality that is already manifest. They can't create reality, and they need us for that reason. And since they're disconnected from source, their only means of sustaining themselves is through harvesting and feeding on our energy. We already know that as well. And of course, they feed on Gaia herself as well as all life here, which is all part of the trinary system. And proof of that can be seen around us through the golden mean, phi, and the flower of life. If we stop feeding these entities, they would cease to exist. It'd certainly change our system, that's for sure. So subconsciously, I've always known that we're a trinary system, and that's why I've dedicated my life to reuniting the trinity in humanity, certainly in this life, consciously anyway. But I remember a life before the alien AIs and reptilians came, and we had no implants and no chakras. We just had the three energy centers that I mentioned, which brings me to what the trinity is and is not. And it's not the bastardized religious version of Father, Son, and Ghost. And adding holy made the ghost sound important rather than openly degrading the mother, the divine feminine, and the goddess, turning her into a ghostly presence with no form. And that's what everybody thinks of the Trinity, and that is not the Trinity. So I see lots of people talking about the feminine and the masculine and uniting the two of them, but I haven't been able to find anyone even talking about how absolutely vital it is to reunite the real divine Trinity, mother, father, and child, and the divine inner feminine, masculine, and child, and with good reason. These entities do not want humanity to be whole and able to remove demon, reptilian presence here and no longer have them feeding on us. And because of the computer microwave technology that's already so entrenched, removing the AI presence, I think, will be a little more challenging and need more shrewd, cunning way of doing that. But it's definitely doable. We just have to reunite with our true selves through the Trinity and work together. I think that's the thing that's really missing, is people are all doing everything alone instead of actually coming together to bring a greater unity. So as for blocking the unification of the divine Trinity to the point where humanity has forgotten that it even exists, you know, this is part of the whole tactic that they've used to diminish us and disempower us, and then taking that to another level by eliminating the family unit, which is the physicalization of the divine family, and an expression of the trinary system that all living beings are a part of, and replacing it with a binary system, pushing us towards transgenderism, which is the focus on little ones starting in as early as kindergarten. You know, that's just abominable. And the parents are freely giving their children up to this. And video games is just another level of the sleep that everybody's in, which is really disturbing. So at the moment, humanity is locked in an illusionary battle between the masculine and the feminine, and it is illusionary. So therefore, we're stuck in a false duality. But the goal is to eliminate even the masculine and feminine, and as you know, they're working heavily towards that.
And what we're seeing also, Mesheril, is this grotesque grotesque perversion of the divine masculine, the divine feminine, where the whole concept of sex has been thrown out the window as far as gender is concerned. We're not supposed to think in terms of males and females anymore. Everything's fluid, everything is up for grabs, and this creates more confusion, more time spent in one's headspace trying to decide who or what somebody is. And then it's not even that. It's like, okay, well, I've decided I'm this, that, or the other gender. Then they try to push that mindset onto others. And so what we're seeing here is this mass confusion, mass psychosis that's being pushed by the corporate media, by academia. And I never thought I would see this day. I mean, on a conscious level, it's just so asinine and so insane what's being pushed in front of us. But I guess that's part and parcel of the nature of this, matrix system.
It is, and there's another aspect to this that we're overlooking, and that is that they're also doing it within our food and air and water through the estrogen, like fluoride has an estrogen-like effect on the body, as does chloride and many of the heavy metals. And we're being bombarded by these GMOs as well. They all have an estrogen boosting effect on the body, which tends to make or pushes men towards, or boys, I should say, towards feminism. Well, no, it actually does it to men as well. So, we're seeing that on a physiological level, not just on the emotional twisting of society and taking us towards transgenderism. I mean, the idea of twisting a five-year young's child into changing from being a boy to a girl or vice versa is just an abomination.
Yes, it is.
How could parents even think that that's okay? I mean, anyway, as I said, it is what's going on here, but it's being pushed on us, and that people aren't aware enough to resist it and see it for what it is. I think that's the most disturbing part of all this.
It is. And as far as the joining of the two, the divine masculine, feminine, the child, the divine golden child, if you will, on the one hand, and then the other triune aspect that you mentioned, what would be some practical steps to combine and merge so you have balance and unitarianism as far as those dynamics are concerned?
Well, I have a actual visualization that I do with people, and the 4-part article series that I did last year, it's on my website. So if people are interested, they can go on there and read the first three parts if they're interested. But part 4 actually covers the visualization that I do of bringing the three together. And yes, they have their own purpose and roles. And this is another thing, that the roles have merged and been eliminated of what the masculine and feminine is supposed to be. So we see women doing men's jobs and then men being really, upset about it. And, there's this merging and denial of what our true purpose is. And these energies are archetypal in nature. A man is a man, but his role is to be the direction and purpose in his own life. And his own feminine is his intuition and the ability to see the bigger picture and is wisdom. So every man has that as well as having the divine, I'd call it the divine child, which is the love, which sits in the heart. So when those three together, we naturally move in and out of the qualities of each one of those throughout the day. And I mean, we do that to some degree anyway, but it's not conscious. And we all see men that are quite feminine and a lot of women who are actually quite masculine. And that's because they're so out of balance and not able to, they've rejected that other part of themselves for various reasons, and often it relates to trauma. So, it's not difficult to bring them back into alignment, but then we also have to listen to them when these aspects of us want to contribute to our lives. And I think that's part of the dilemma, that people don't do that either, that, men are afraid to be a bit feminine because then they'll be called sissies. And, it's, adults don't like to be childlike or silly, there's that other side of it as well. So it's all been forced upon us, and it's about bringing it back into alignment and forgetting about what the system says, ultimately.
Yes, because it's the system that's responsible for all this anyway, and our acquiescence going along with it. What we're seeing also is this kind of knuckling under, where we're just made to accept all this aberrant, bizarre behavior, perverse behavior, frankly threatening behavior, as a norm, because we can't complain about it, because that would make us out to be, a bigot or a homophobe, or whatever the case may be. So gradually and incrementally, all of these perversions and all of these abominations are being like heaped upon us, and we're just expected to take it on board. And I would encourage everyone out there to not take it on board. That what we're seeing is an absolute abomination, and a stand has to be made somewhere. If not, I don't mean necessarily picketing on the streets and holding placards up and making a very public, visible display of one's unhappiness about this, but at least internally, at least mentally, we can, just reject out of hand what's happening. Because if we knuckle under, just finish this point, mentally, if we just say, okay, well, they're just going to be the way they are, and we're just going to have to, just deal with it, that acquiescence will lead to a very dark place.
Absolutely, I agree. And I think that it's part of the, I think every one of us has a rebel inside if we're willing to allow that part of us out. In as you say, it doesn't have to be in your face ways, but if we do it in small ways, like one of my rebel traits is that when I'm driving, I drive with a visor down, because there are cameras all along the highway, and
Yes.
I didn't give these people permission to be taking pictures of me, so I drive with the visor down. My sons laugh at me, but that's just my little rebel saying, well, screw you, I didn't say you could take my pictures. So we can do it in small ways. It doesn't have to be big ways, but that's about our purpose in life, and life having meaning. We're being pushed towards having no hope, and we have to find that in ourselves. I think that's the most important message that we have here in this.
Yes, and then if we also remember that these civilizations in the past and the distant past had reached quite great heights of spiritual evolvement. So we know that it's been done before. But because of this collective amnesia and the control of this Saturn cult Luciferian control system, matrix grid, all that has gone into the memory hole to be replaced by this abomination. So one first has to be able to visualize that, well, in the first place, it's already been done. And all a winner needs to know is that another winner or winners did it first. Secondly, when we can tell ourselves and believe that this is an ideal that we can attain, this is an ideal that we can strive for, no matter how humble our circumstances, we can still strive to excel, right? And so I believe that's a part of it too, because too many people have given in a variety of ways, and a lot of the giving in, if you will, has been done subconsciously. They're not even aware that they've knuckled under in so many ways. So I think a starting point is just to realize, you know what, just because it is the way it is now, it doesn't mean it has to stay this way. Because if we make a concerted effort, we can make life as difficult for the controllers as they're making it, difficult for us, right?
And I think that's also, particularly for those of us that are targeted individuals, the more difficult we make it for them by bouncing back, the better, and that's really, that's one of the powers that we have of not becoming hopeless, no matter what they do to us. So, it's interesting that the truth has always been hidden in plain sight for those that are awake and aware enough to see. And, the old book, 1984, which was then made into a movie, but movies like The Godfather, Minority Report, Charlie Brown's Christmas, and then later The Matrix and The 13th Floor, and there's a few others, have been blatant clues as to what they've had planned for us. And I noticed a year or so ago that Marvel was blatantly showing us what they had planned.
Oh, yes.
I noticed it first in Captain America Winter Soldier, and I came out of there thinking, oh my gosh, that's exactly what they've got planned for us. The end of last season's Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was really blatant. They had the leading characters hooked up to a massive planetary-sized computer simulation where they lived out a reverse reality to what was going on in the real world. Well, we're sort of living that already on a lot of levels. But
yes. No, I got to see that.
You can watch series free online, but it's the last half of Agents Masters of S.H.I.E.L.D. last year. I watched it because I was kind of in awe to see what were they going to do with this, because it was so blatant. Well, here they're helping to manifest it, because that's the other point I wanted to make is that these movies that we go to watch, remember, these entities can't manifest reality. They need us to do that. So every time we go and sit down and watch these movies and depending on the mindset, I mean, I'm not putting any energy into it when I watch something, but if you have masses of mind controlled people that are focusing on the reality that they're watching in front of them, people do go into the reality. They are helping to manifest that, and that's actually part of how they're creating this.
Yes, and also because so much of reality, because of the social engineering, cultural Marxism around us, has already taken root. Because the steady drumbeat and the bullfrogs chorus of the media and academia pushing all these cultural Marxist memes, when we see it in the cinema or on TV, it merely reinforces what we've already been told, what we've already been indoctrinated with. Let me give you an example. I think I've talked about this before. I was told that there was a new Star Trek on a series on Netflix. So,
yes.
So I'm switching. I'm surfing Netflix. Oh, here it is. Right, I find it, and right off the bat, in the very first episode, you see all these already predominant cultural socialist Marxist themes. Like the males seem to all be effeminate. Many of them speak in a falsetto type voices, and they have within the context of the starship they're on, they have what seem to be like secretarial roles almost, where they don't seem to have any kind of command or decision-making role on board the ship. The two women that are in control of the ship, the commander and the second in command, are both strong-willed women. There's an alien male there that is kind of a ninny. He's constantly vacillating. He's constantly giving bad advice. He looks very ugly and scary, and he's the epitome of a waffling, indecisive, confused male. And he's
I think the main character, the woman, the captain, I think her name's Michael as well. So they've even given her a masculine name just to rub it in.
Yes, and so what we see is, once again, we see all these males that are weak. They're kind of feminized. They kind of got the pretty boy look. They speak in falsettos. They don't move with masculinity. It's very studied. It's very deliberate, even how they move and how they manipulate the controls. It's very feminine, right? And so we're seeing what's going on around us, what's being pushed as a norm around us. We're seeing it playing out even in the newest TV shows right now. And so the kids today are not going to have any frame of reference. So all they've
Well,
known
yeah.
is
They,
that in the schools that this is what they push. This is gender studies, transgender fluidity, et cetera, et cetera.
yeah, it's creating the confusion, which is what they want.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because when you have these people, if you have a society where there are no more alpha males, where you have no more people that are dissenters, no more people that are nonconformist, even people that are just plain old malcontents, they aren't around anymore, right? Because they're
Hmm.
deemed to be part of the undesirable mob. Then all you have left is this Borg collective. All you have left is this, group of people, or at least muted consciousness, plugged into the simulation that you talked about, and that pulls them away from spirit. It pulls them away from source. What are the practical things that people can do? I know that people talk about earthing and grounding, and some people like to grid and work with crystals, and some people like to have a very vigorous lifestyle as far as exercise, swimming, and bicycling and whatnot. From a practical day-to-day sense, how could one like unplug from that which they are presenting to us, and then get into physically first and mentally, and then get into this spiritual integration that you were talking about?
Well, I think part of the main thing is to get out of the diet, the sad diet, the standard American or standard Australian diet,
Oh
which
yes.
is processed food and full of GMOs, and so we are what we eat. We are, it's a bit more to it than that. But if you're eating dead food, well, you're becoming dead on a physiological level. So that is one of the main things. Everybody should have a water purifier that's at least getting rid of as much of the fluorine as possible, or fluoride, which is very difficult. So it's important to get a water purifier that actually has proof that they get rid of at least most of the fluoride and all of the chloride and as many of the heavy metals and chemicals that are in there. And I think grounding is a really important thing. Getting out in nature. I mean, it's an antidepressant. I mean, I've seen that somewhere. This is an antidepressant. Well, it actually is, but it also connects us to our true self. When we're out in nature, we're connected to source. So one of the things you can do, like if you don't have trees or anything around you, one of the things that I do, or parks, I should say, one of the things I do is when I'm driving along is I breathe in the energy of the trees as I'm driving past. And this is a wonderful way to actually regenerate yourself from the nature that's around us. So we usually have some trees as we're driving along, so you can do that. And having some kind of clearing, grounding, connecting to the heart and source. Meditation, ideally, but a lot of people say that it's difficult to meditate. But even if you do deep breathing, and actually left nostril breathing has been shown to be incredibly powerful at reducing stress. And it's the stress that actually is really what's killing us. And it's no coincidence that we're being stressed on so many different levels, because that is the big thing that's taking us out of our soul connection. And as I'll get into in a moment, it actually takes us out of proper DNA replication and ensoulment, or the soul connection. So we need to reduce our stress as much as we can, and this left nostril breathing, 5 minutes or so a day or before you go to sleep, actually is ideal. So there are lots of little things that we can do to help unplug, and take your mobile phone out of your bedroom at night. Don't have it. I've heard of people having it under their pillow.
Oh, I know, that's insane.
And everybody should, and I am shooting here, should have some kind of protection device on their phone to minimize the amount of radiation coming out of it. I mean, you can't prevent the radiation, but you can prevent how it affects your body. So I think I've got 7 different devices on mine, including Shunkite and some other Tesla plates. But we all should be using those, and keep them away from children. I mean, the worst thing that the research says that microwave energy, Wi-Fi, is damaging children's brains, and it is damaging their DNA. Now, all kids have computers and tablets in the classroom now. That is shocking.
Yeah, it is.
They're already being inundated with this disgusting energy. So, I mean, I personally am an advocate of homeschooling, but, a lot of people can't do that. But we can only do so much, but there are ways that we can protect ourselves as much as possible and get into daily rituals, practice that actually help us to stay grounded and not be plugged into the world around us. Like I haven't turned the television on in years, so I think staying away from television is a really big thing. There's never anything good on there. It's only mind control anyway. And even limiting social media to a point, like it's an addiction. There's a whole
it fosters
research.
OCD behavior.
Yeah, there's a research now that particularly in younger ones, they look for the likes because the like gives them a dopamine rush, which is the neurotransmitter that is raised on with any addiction, drugs, any chemical. So, it is a drug, phone. So not going to your phone first thing in the morning or last thing at night. We're also disrupting our sleep by looking at the phone last thing at night because the screens are blue. That takes our melatonin and serotonin out, which we need for sleep. So there's a lot of things that we're doing that are disrupting our normal sleep and waking processes by having our mobile phones around us. So if we can minimize the amount that we use them and, unplug and literally unplug from them as much as we possibly can.
Especially now at a time when those that have within their DNA profile morphic resonance field the wherewithal, the means to pull in information, guidance, insight, call it what you will, from higher spiritual dimensions and planes, the worst thing one can do is surround themselves with unchecked emissions from all these digital devices. I likewise have little stickers, and I have like orgone generators plugged into my wall. I have big tensor hoops that pump out megahertz range frequencies because it is a frequency war. And so one of the things I'm mindful of is, there's nothing wrong with going back to the basics. A lot of people keep their phones by their beds because, well, I need an alarm. I need it to wake up. Well, either learn how to wake up without an alarm or go and get an old-fashioned, wind-up clock or something.
Exactly.
One does not have to. One does not have to get a digital device. One can just get like a good old-fashioned wind-up clock or one that takes batteries or something that has a relatively low emission attached to it, right? So there's things that we can do, because what'll happen is when we create this safe, emissions-free environment for ourselves, that will move us further along down the track to this healing and reintegration dynamic that you were talking about earlier. Because right now, so many of these kids and so many of these families, the closeness of our neighbors, where we don't have like our ancestors did. They would have their own spreads, and they would, their nearest neighbor in some cases could be a mile or 2 miles away. Now everyone's kind of elbow to elbow. And so even though in a given household one can have all these orgone devices and whatnot, right next door or on both sides, you could have neighbors that have smart meters. You could have neighbors that have all kinds of digital devices. So it's you not only need to protect yourself at home, you need to protect yourself in your car. You need to protect yourself when you're out and about. I always talk about the necessity of creating a sanctuary bubble for yourself wherever you go, because then you really begin to get grounded and really begin to plug into your true self. And then you realize that, man, whatever goes on around me, I'm still going to do my own thing. I'm still going to be resonating at the frequency I need to be at.
Exactly, and actually there is a lot of radiation in our cars as well. So, we do need to have devices,
The
like
new ones especially.
Especially, but they all put out electrical radiation as well. Something interesting that I want to share about Enki, who actually groomed me from birth. And Enki, I I see as Lucifer. But a few months ago, I'd gone into the abyss to retrieve a covenant that had been a particularly nasty one that had been imposed upon me. And while I was in there getting the covenant back, and he says to me, "Oh, it's you again." So, he knows who I am. Well, he knows I know who he is, I should say. What I saw was cocoons with the souls of every being on the planet inside, which looked a lot like what we see in the Matrix of those. The cocoons I saw were actually gold. They look more like the movie Cocoon, actually. And, I was led to believe that that's the Matrix level that we're already living on, that the soul is already entrapped in these cocoons. Now, whether that's true or not is really irrelevant. It doesn't matter, because it's all about freeing ourselves first, and that's really what we're talking about. How do we free ourselves from the system? Because, on many different levels we are slaves. And I know there's a lot of people who don't want to hear that and fervently deny it, but the money system alone is a slave system.
Yeah.
So, even if you believe there's no soul trap, we still live in a level of slavery that we need to get out of. Now, we're not going to be able to get rid of the money system anytime soon, and fossil fuels is another level of the slave system. Again, it comes back to freeing ourselves within, claiming that sovereignty and disconnecting from the matrix on whatever level we possibly can. So, I thought that was an interesting vision that I was shown. Last week, I actually had a very interesting one that was very specific to me, because I've been talking a lot about, a number of people have been talking about how to get out of the soul trap. There are people that, well, I really see it as that, when you go to the light, you're sucked back into the matrix system and
Yes.
just recycled. I really see that. I've been actively teaching people how to, when the body dies, remember, don't go to the light. Whether you go through to the heart of Mother Earth or whether there's holes in the net, I don't know. I mean, we haven't been to the other side to come back and tell anyone, this is how we do it. But I remind myself frequently, and I had the opportunity last year of expressing to a couple of beings before they passed over how to not go to the light and to free themselves. I trust they went to source. I don't know for sure. But this experience was definitely a in-your-face kind of experience. So I have a nice balcony where I get to go outside now, and I had a feeling like I've really had to go out this one day. So I went out sitting, kind of meditating, and a plane flew over, which is in itself a strange occurrence because I've never seen a plane fly over in my viewpoint. So that I found quite fascinating. So I was watching this plane, and not 30 seconds passed. The plane was just out of sight, and another identical one flew past, came along exactly the same path, and I had a Matrix moment. I don't know if you remember in the Matrix. I've seen the movie 20 or 30 times. So in the movie, they're going up the stairs to get out to the Nebuchadnezzar, and Neo sees a cat walk past, and then you see the shimmering of the Matrix, and another cat walks past, and he said, "Oh, another cat." And Trinity says, "Well, was it the same cat or was it a different cat?" And he thinks it was the same one. And Morpheus says, "Oh no, they've changed something in the system." Well, that's the message that I got. They've changed something in the system so that they're making it more difficult for us to get out. So not that I believe that, it's obviously not going to be impossible, but, they've obviously taken note of the fact that there's a lot of us that are teaching people don't go to the light, and that's, of course, not what they want. So they obviously have changed the system in some way to make it more constrained, I suppose, which we have to just wait till we get to the other side and just remember, don't go to the light and go from there.
There's a lot of things that are blatantly obvious as far as they're ramping up and amping up this control grid, because the skies nowadays are so polluted with chemtrails and they're so fake. It's like Sometimes I look up and it's like a Van Gogh painting in broad daylight, right? With these
Yeah,
freaky
I
looking
know.
clouds, streaky looking things all over the place, and currents going this way and that. It's just bizarre, but no one seems to notice, of course.
Oh, well,
And
they've given them new names now, you know.
oh yeah, yeah, they give them Latin sounding names. That's a funny thing. You got to laugh at some of this, folks.
Oh, look, you
And
have to laugh at it.
so it seems that they're ramping up the agenda to keep everyone in control, and just as a point of interest, because you and I know that ETs are here. You and I have had experiences with ETs and non-human life forms, and now in the last few weeks they come out with this soft disclosure where they have these faceless, usually American military, ex-military people. Talking about UFOs. Oh, look at this video taken by these Navy pilots, and what's your take on that? And where do you see that potentially leading?
I don't know if I know where it's leading, but I think that because so many people are talking about it, I think it's Russia and France had disclosure a few years ago.
Oh
So
yes, yes.
it's not like how could anybody not know they exist? Like that to me is still quite mind-boggling. But I think that there's a push to have, like you call it, a soft disclosure. Although there was a Congress presentation a couple of 2014, I think it was, where a whole bunch of even pilots and military, a whole bunch of people came in and talked about their experiences with aliens, and again, the fact that it's so in our face. I don't know how people still deny it, but I think it's a diversion tactic. When we get down to it, there's clearly something else, some other agenda that's going on here. I mean, there was some UFOs supposedly. I don't even like the words flying saucers that were seen over the Air Force base in Florida there that were, although they were more than likely the human ones, not the alien ones anyway. But the people were calling that a disclosure. So I kind of laugh at it because they're among us all the time. I mean, how many people do we know that are either hosts, like they're an empty shell,
Oh yeah.
and they've actually been taken over. There's no soul in there at all, or they're just possessed. So it's blatantly in our face all the time. And I think that there's definitely this agenda with the hybrids. That's a whole other thing.
Yeah,
But yeah, I think on one level, I said I think it's a distraction to give us false hope that yes, the American government's going to come out and say, yeah, they exist. In fact, I read a post, I don't know, some time ago where NASA forgot to tell us that aliens exist. It's like, how
yeah,
can you not laugh at that?
yeah, yeah. It seems to be a feeble effort to try to maintain control of a situation of a situation they never had control of in the first place.
Exactly.
Because there may come a point in time when this, that, or the other ET race may just say, to heck with it. We're going to do our own disclosure, and we're going to get up close and personal. And there's not a bloody thing anyone can do about it, right? So,
Well, that's exactly right. And I have to wonder why we haven't already had that, because, we know in ancient times they were very much amongst us.
yes,
So I do know why. I mean, the reptilians are holding them back.
yes, yes.
The
There is that
you know,
push pull.
they're yeah. So there's a lot of species that are obviously being withheld, so to speak, and can't get in here. But yeah, I think it's a diversion tactic.
Interesting that would happen now around this time frame, but you know what? It's like there's our "I told you so" moment. It's like, why do all these sheeple have to wait until these faceless military people come along and say
Yeah,
that it's real before they even accept the possibility that it's real? They have to
yeah,
wait once again for a master authority figure to come pat them on the head and say it's okay. Santa
yeah.
Claus is real.
Well,
So
that's right. If you and I say it, well, it doesn't exist. But if somebody in authority, like the president, said it, well, it must be right.
yeah, and so you
Yeah.
know what? I'm gonna hold their feet to the fire. If I hear somebody making some comments that I know that before they were skeptical or dismissive of the subject, say, wait a minute, pal, right? I mean, before these your masters told you it was okay to talk about this in polite company. You
Yeah.
you laugh at the subject. Now look at you now, and that's the whole idea behind the psyop. Another level of it is to instill confusion, to you know once again say, okay, well, I guess these are the authority figures. So if I want to find out anything more, I'll just have to go to them, and it's really just more of the same, and it's just more and more of divesting ourselves of our power and divesting ourselves of what you talked about at the outset, free will. Now, as far as in the time we got left in this first part, free will is one of those subjective terms. It's like truth. Well, what's truth? Is it something you can hold in your hand? Is it something tangible? Truth is the most subjective term, one of the most subjective terms out there, because it varies from person to person, even in our field, as you can notice, right? Now, it's what would be the ideal in your terms of what it would mean to have free will, because I think that there's another level of that, Mesheril, because in some of these higher instantaneous causation type planes and realms, free will is tied into instantaneous manifestation. So, but the problem in our reality is that the societal wide fear mongering, propaganda, brainwashing, etc., everyone's indoctrinatory system, or most people's indoctrinatory system, is constantly pumping out different hormones to regulate how they feel, but everything is out of whack because of all the stresses they've been subjected to, and because they get out of whack, okay, well, here's the psychiatric tyranny to get them back in balance, right? So it's this constant like overflow, or conversely drip, drip, drip of needed hormones that are totally out of whack in our system, and yet we're supposed to make free will choices, make free will decisions within the context of a control system. So when we talk about a reality where we can instantaneously manifest, there has got to be a lot of groundwork done before people get to that level of free will.
Well, I'd like to see, as I mentioned right at the beginning, I'd like to see the word free will eliminated altogether, because I think it's a trick part of the binary system and really has nothing to do with us as spirit having this human experience. We are manifestors. So we have choice. I'd like to think that we use the word choice rather than free will.
Yes.
I think that's a far better word to use, but we are manifestors more than anything else. And as I described at the beginning, we need to get those three energy centers, the three brains, and we all know, well, I don't know if everybody knows, but there's certainly a lot of science that's behind talking about the belly brain and the heart brain actually being more powerful than the head brain. So, in fact, the heart brain is 6,000 times higher magnetic field than the head brain. So, and the heart brain generates our aura. So it's been measured by instruments to be at least 12 feet out around us. So we know that a strong heart and heart field creates our aura, and that's what we connect to with other people all the time. So we're actually in the energy field of other people all the time, and that is really a big issue, because that's where we really do need to cleanse ourselves every day when we get home, have a shower, wash all the energy of other people off. People don't even think about that one.
Yeah.
But getting those three energy centers, regardless of what you think about the chakras. So, chakras aside, get those three energy centers humming, activated. So body, mind, feelings. It's body is the heart, which is love. Mind is your thoughts. And the feeling of, which is the union of the thought plus love or fear, but we want love. When those are in harmony and in sync with one another, then we actually manifest our reality. So without that, we don't manifest. So the whole biblical thing of ask and you shall receive was only a very small portion of what was apparently originally written. And in there was written that I don't remember the exact words of it, but it was about having your thoughts and your feelings being in alignment with your desire and what you wanted to manifest. So I think we're much better off getting rid of the word free will, because I think there is so much confusion around it, and I think that's on purpose. So we have choice, and then we are to really know at the core of our being that we are manifestors. We're manifesting our reality all the time. As I said, every day you are manifesting your reality. You might not like the reality that you're manifesting, but you have the power to change that. And I think that's where starting with love, activating love in your heart, and having your thoughts in alignment with that, and then the feelings, that helps you, not helps you, but that is what creates the reality that you want to have. And I think that's the most important thing that I would like to get across, is that we do have the power to do that, and we need to change our terminology.
And most people have seen, object lessons in their own lives where they just get on a roll of good fortune. They get on a roll of good luck. They get on a roll of meeting the right people at the right time, catching breaks. Some people make a habit out of this. That they just have this ability to always land on their feet, right? And so we see it manifest in other people's lives. Why shouldn't it manifest in our own lives if we give ourselves permission to have such good fortune and to have such luck and fortuitousness? That's a start, because you talked about the thought aspect of it too, and how everything has to be in alignment with the feelings and the motivations and whatnot. Because of this constant onslaught from the media and from academia and from the social engineers, most people's thoughts are pretty much on the polluted, even the sewage side of the thought spectrum. So that's another thing that needs to be cleansed, if you will, right? And another reason to avoid, when at all possible, the digital devices, the social media, what have you. I mean, for me, Facebook is, at the moment, I wouldn't call it a necessary evil. I needed to, I put podcasts out and commentaries and other things, and I maintain comms with people, but it's not an ideal situation. I want to find another social media or another means to stay in contact with people and not have to do the whole Facebook thing because of the negative energy and the AI and everything associated with it. So I think that the more that we can just detach from that construct, from that type of intrusive AI infrastructure, we'll begin to feel more. We'll begin to feel more embodied. We'll begin to have more good fortune. Because what happens nowadays in life as well as on the social media is we just take on board all these energies. People that aren't very good at or aware of the need to keep their shields up and to keep their energy fields clean. I do the same thing you do when I'm out and about in society. When I come home, the first thing I do is I take a shower,
Yeah,
because
that's right.
I'm just washing that stuff off of me. So that's
Yeah.
that's a very good starting point.
If people can start being conscious of their thoughts,
Yes.
people are thinking all the time. If you actually stopped and listened to what you're thinking, and I'm saying, this for the listeners, you would probably be quite horrified if you were able to tune in and actually see what you're thinking about, because, it's usually a barrage of negative self-talk. And that's the first thing really that we need to eliminate. I mean, activating love. Well, so the second thing to activate would be to get conscious of what thoughts have you got going through your head. Are you telling yourself, oh, I'm an idiot, or I never remember anything, or I'm stupid? Those are the kind of things that people have running through their head day in, day out. I never do anything right, whatever. So that the conscious awareness of being aware of your thoughts, and if necessary, have an affirmation that you say, I am whole. It doesn't matter, I am love, whatever. Start having something that you just do that all day long for 21 days, ideally, to help reduce the amount of negative self-talk that you have going on. I mean, that alone can change the thoughts that you have going through your head. So I have an affirmation. I have obsessive thoughts. If something's going on that's caused trauma, I often think about it repetitively, like obsessively, and I journal. I actually have a journal that I empty my mind of whatever's troubling me, and I use affirmations, positive affirmations, obviously, because even I am stupid is an affirmation. But I have
Yes.
positive affirmations that I've been using for over 30 years. And I can guarantee that they work. And there's people that say, "Oh no, affirmations don't work." I guarantee they work, because they completely changed my life from being a traumatized child who thought negatively of myself, up until I was in my late 20s, to actually loving myself and loving who I am, and knowing I'm a good person and very caring and generous. So, that comes with work, though. It actually takes some discipline and dedication and loving ourselves enough to be able to do that. And I think that's part of the problem, is that the mind control has really gotten people out of even wanting to love themselves and take care of themselves. They'd rather go and get a Coke than go and get a glass of water and flush their body out. So it's a dilemma. So, but people who call themselves conscious and awake, and I hear that a lot, and I have to say that a lot of the people that say they're awake, well, they're awake in varying degrees, but they're often not as awake as they think they are, because they're not conscious of their thoughts, and that is a really important aspect of conscious awareness, is that we must be aware of the thoughts that we're using, because that is a really big part of the manifestation process.
Indeed. Well, we've reached the end of the first part of this interview. Mesheril, can you give our listeners your website?
It's mesherilmanyfeathers.net.
And this is the Cosmic Switchboard Show. If you like what we do, if you believe in what we do, please go to thecosmicswitchboard.com, sign up and become a member, and we'll see you at the start of the next segment.